alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think he did a good job introducing me. So for those who don't know me, he just gave you the brief. Today, we will discuss the funds that are in Oman. We'll try to go through some of the risks. So I'll introduce my panel as they come. You've all met Mr. Bill earlier in the morning. Please come. Now we'll try our best. Okay, so until they come on, I'll introduce them as they come on the stage. Basically, what we'll try to cover is to go through the funds that are existing in Oman. After that, we'll go into what risks the banks have to look at. So we're just touching on the finance aspect of how SMEs can get finance, whether entrepreneurs or actual SMEs that exist in the country, all right? After that, we'll try to, it will be like more engaging, so we'll try not to take a lot of time. And then we want to engage with you, the audience. We want to engage with entrepreneurs, SMEs. If there are a few bankers, so you can contribute whenever you feel so. But once we get to the Q&A, all right? So there are three of the guys. Mr. Bill, you met today. He's the CEO of Inspired Solutions. Mr. Hussain Al Ibrahim is the business development AGM from Bank Dhofar. And Mr. Sami Al Hassan, as he comes on, he's from Grufen. So I think the gentleman from Shell just introduced him enough. All right. So I'll just leave this floor for them, each one, to just give a quick introduction.
This morning, for 5 years here in Oman, I have been helping to manage funds. And when I first came to Oman, it was the Growfin Fund, which now Sami is managing. And then after managing that fund for 2 years, I started my own company specific to develop SMEs here in Oman by designing and managing SME accelerators. I also have many years' experience financing SMEs in Oman and around the world.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hussain Al Ibrahim, not Hassan. Okay, and I'm the acting AGM of business banking, which is mainly the SME in Bank Dhofar. Of course, most of you know Bank Dhofar. I've been almost more than 25 years in the country. Bank Dhofar is one of the pioneers of SME in Oman. They have started actually the SME initiative much before 2013. They had the vision for this national initiative, and they wanted to be part of it. We have few business centers in Oman which exclusively serve SMEs, are located in Suhar, Salalah, and few of them in Ghala, and two of them, one is Ghala and one is in Muscat Grand Mall. So we hope we can benefit all of you from this summit.
Sami Al Hassan, Oman Fund Manager and Investment Executive at Growfin One. Basically, the fund started, as Chris mentioned earlier, back in 2005. Then as Intalaqa Enterprises Fund, and then we, with the 10 million gift donation, $10 million gift donation from Shell. Thank you, Shell, for this support. Again, in 2010, $7 million again injected by Shell. So total fund size is $70 million. The fund was rebranded in 2012 to Nemu Oman Fund. This is basically part of the Nemu fund established in the MENA region with the total restricted commitment from Shell Foundation of $50 million. So the fund is basically promoted by Shell Foundation as well as promoted and managed by Growfin.
Thank you. All right, so just a quick brush. What we will cover today is basically three aspects. So we'll start by discussing the funds that are established in Oman that do exist, so at least you get an idea. Then we'll move into the banking sector. We'll talk about the risks that banks, funds have to go through so all entrepreneurs can understand why banks do reject some of the loans, why they give you less capital when you go for it. And then we'll try to discuss as a panel how we can mitigate some of the risks, all right? After that, we will try to come up with certain recommendations that we feel don't exist in Oman, all right, such as venture capital, private equity. I do understand there are some funds that think they operate as a VC, but we'll try to bring our aspect, a real VC and how VC thinks, all right? So if you have any questions, again, just leave it to the Q&A. We'll try to wrap up quite quick because Bill covered a lot of it during his panel, but that was good, all right, because we want to engage with you guys, all right? So we'll start with the first question. This one will be to Sam, and I hope everybody can hear me over here. All right, so Sami, if you give us a quick overview of what funds do we have in Oman set at the moment?
There are quite a few of them actually that are directed toward SMEs. Oman is one of them actually. Then there is the, you understand, Raft Fund, which is government-based. There is the SME Development Fund. There is the Youth Fund. So I could mention 4 of them, basically, apart from the incubators programs and supports, from the Zubair establishment, from the towers. Bill, maybe you, other programs maybe in place?
Those are the financing programs that I know of. There are other programs that are development programs, such as Zubair SEC. There's also programs that are financed with the large companies' CSR funding, for instance, the cell at Omithco, for instance, the Hassan Growth Finance Project at BP Oman. Those are 2 of the financing or accelerators that I know of. But I continue to ask myself, does everyone know about those? Sometimes I think that's challenges.
It is a challenge.
Yeah, so you think basically what a lot of us feel, like those funds are either not marketed well enough to entrepreneurs, i.e. every fund has a minimum cap, and a maximum cap of loans, all right? Entrepreneurs don't know who to go to. And how can we handle that? I mean, how can funds, are there gaps, first of all? Are there gaps between the funds type of finance? You as Growfen can discuss that, but also from your own experience within the market, even Bill or even Hussain can find out. Could you give us like a feedback? What do you think are the gaps between those funds?
See, each one has its own criteria, basically, and an objective. Now, for the Oman Fund, the objective is to create jobs for Omanis, to make sustainable SME sector in the country. So we usually are very selective in our approach, investment approach. We have in place investment strategy that we follow and adhere to, that look into certain items or criteria when we review investments. Within that, the impact part of it, Shell is keen to see the impact, the developmental part of that. What is the job will be created? What is the services will be provided or products that will be offered? So we usually target certain investments which will have these items in place.
Yeah, sorry. Are those investments industry-specific, sub-industry specific?
They are open to any industry. As a fund, as a general rule, we get involved in any sector except the real estate and the agriculture.
So you already have two sectors that you don't get involved with.
This is purely because of our lack of let's say,
Expertise.
expertise in these markets. But apart from that, the fund itself, as it is now, we have done, as Chris mentioned, 30 investments. This is spread across different sectors, you could name them. We've done oil and gas services, we've done trading, we've done fishing, we've done manufacturing, a lot of manufacturing. There are coming up quite shaping up.
And I understood from you discussing this earlier, you guys start from a minimum of 50,000.
Yeah, we have a criteria. We have our model is based on providing an appropriate finance coupled with the business support. And this is what distinguishes us from other probably funds in the market, that this is an integrated provision solution provided for these SMEs. Now, we do funding minimum of 50,000 riyal, and we go up to 750,000 riyal. So anything below that, there is other probably funds or institutes out there.
Yeah, we will discuss them with Bill.
And something beyond that, banks definitely have the appetite to do that.
All right.
And we go between 3 to 7 years.
But type of finance, it's a term loan?
It's basically a debt element, or let's say a term loan. What is also special about us, we have flexibility, so we have done equity transactions, at least 2 of them. Our mandate allows us to do equity. It's just based on the let's say the time or the quality of the investments we do. But again, we can and we are allowed to do equity and debt. Now, focus currently basically is debt, largely because of this fund size. It's $70 million only, so we have to be cautious around how we utilize the funds around and how we really disperse these funds. So it just work well with us as a product.
Thank you. Bill, can you give us your feedback, being an accelerator?
I was just thinking about the last cohort that we accelerated in Dakhliya and Dahira. The average annual revenues for 2014 was 30,000 riyal, average. So if you look at the Central Bank of Oman designation, that is small, as small, medium enterprises, because small is between 25,000 and 250,000. Below 25,000 is called micro.
We don't have that.
Now, if you look at my last cohort, 47% was micro. Now, can they access financing for the business? No, they cannot. They can take a personal loan for the business. But what are we trying to do in Oman? We're trying to get that mindset that I have my personal finances and I have my business finances, and I'm going to keep them separate. But what we're doing in that micro section is we're really forcing them to take personal loans. Ideally, they're going to be taking money, equity from families and friends and their own savings. But at some point, they need expansion financing.
Don't you think that Oman Development Bank covers this, and also Rafad? They cover the 5,000 to 10,000 Riyal loan.
They could. I'm not that familiar with
They
Rafid.
do, they do,
Okay.
but for certain, there's industry specific. I mean, and to tailor a,
Certain industries.
mostly home owned.
So home-based businesses.
Home-based, not
Okay.
actual businesses, but
Okay.
home-based, yeah.
So we don't do home-based businesses. These are all, they have a store, or they have a beauty parlor, or they're selling retail.
Okay. Now, you said something, I mean, the gentleman from Shell described something, a program that they have where they teach. We'll come back to that because I think we need to discuss the risks. So I'll move now to our second point. Mr. Hussain, can you, from the banking sector, a lot of entrepreneurs always complain, all right? Being an entrepreneur myself, I've knocked a lot of doors, whether in Oman, UAE, or the US, and I know how banks look, and I know how frustrated it gets. But when you get to understand why they refuse or reject, you would, understand where you need to be prepared with. So I just want you to explain to everybody what are the risks associated with SMEs.
Okay. The previous panel, I think it was very clearly it's been highlighted that all kinds of risks are involved with SME. It starts from management risk, performance, sustainability, payment, XYZ. But from my point of view as a bank, it starts three key risks we look at is the business risk, performance risk, and sustainability risk. I'll try to give you a case, kind of an example, which will be much more easier for the audience to understand. Is an entrepreneur or a company or a borrower will come to my office and will ask for a loan or a facility with a very nice feasibility study or a document has been prepared by their auditors. Now, the more you go deep, I'm telling based on experience, and I'm telling based on majority of the cases which we go through. When you go deep in the feasibility study, that's most of the entrepreneurs are unable to answer any of the bank's questions. And then maybe after the third or fourth or fifth question, he will hand over you the business card of the auditor. Here is my auditor. He is the one who made the feasibility study. Please speak to him. So that's one area which is very important. That gives that sort of a discomfort for the bank when the business owner who has come, he is unable to basically answer some basic banking or technical questions related to his business, not even the hardcore banking terminologies. Even if we agree that, okay, everything went fine at that level, we come to the funding, discussing the funding part of it. If we divide it to a short-term and long-term funding, for the long-term funding, we usually don't see the entrepreneurs and the SMEs they actually have any a business plan which is sustainable for the long-term funding.
You mean
usually
sustainable for the duration of
the loan? Because usually the business has come within sort of an analysis or a prospect about a specific job has been done, and I need to do the similar job. But do you have a plan? Do you have a mindset? Do you have the business case available for you? That's this business. Can you give me a comfort as a bank that this business will sustain up to the time when my loan will reach to the maturity? Comes to the short-term funding is very important for us. Also, the performance risk. We have to have that comfort that even we are financing the entrepreneur or the company for the short term, that they will be able to basically execute the job within the time frame agreed between them and their contractor. In short, just to make it short for us, that's we as a bank, we look at the comfort. Whenever we sit with the entrepreneur or the company, we need that comfort. And I don't know how true it is, because most of the speakers or in the panel were saying that the banks are forcing for high amount of a collateral. I tend to disagree that from the banking perspective. The bank is only asking for a collateral when there is a gap, when there is a discomfort. Of course, if I'm financing an asset, it's my right as a bank to take that asset as a collateral. But I am trying, as a bank, we are not asking for a collateral until and unless we have a gap. We see a gap available in the credit, in all the three risks which we have highlighted. Then we may impose some sort of a collateral to cover the gap.
So you're basically three main sources of risk: the management experience of the team, which
Yes.
every fund goes through as well. Second of all, the sustainability or the futuristic vision of the business.
Exactly.
And then third of all is the commitment. How are you going to go forward after your contract or whatever you're going to
How well you'll be able to execute it? Will you satisfy your client needs or not?
All right. Now, this takes us to our second part of the question, which is the risk. And I will let Bill answer this. Do you feel there are ways to mitigate risk through accelerators, through what Shell is doing with Growfin, and also after that, Sam, if you could contribute? I mean, do you think this sort of mentoring would help reduce risks?
I absolutely believe that, yes.
What type of mentoring we are talking about? I mean, who should do the mentoring? I mean, with Shell is doing it. I mean, but not everybody gets into Shell. How can other entrepreneurs get the proper training, all right, to get the proper confidence? Because entrepreneurship is all about confidence.
Yes.
You know, some of the gentlemen here said, I took the risk, I don't want to take more risk, it's scary. And how do you think we can mentor them?
Well, we have a strong, as His Excellency from the United Kingdom mentioned this morning, the Princess Trust has helped POSMED set up a very strong mentoring program. And I think one of the significant benefits of that will be an increase in self-confidence. And I have personally led at MBC workshops in increasing self-confidence, and part of that is also about presenting yourself in a professional manner. I believe there are a number of sources of mentoring to help increase managerial capacity. Whether or not everyone hears about it, I don't know. We all spend a lot of money marketing this as smartly as we're capable of. And I know POSMED is sending out SMS messages to everyone that's registered. But to be very honest, I look at my cohort, my entrepreneurs in Dakhliya, they're not registered at POSMED. So they're not getting those messages. We are making steps. We can do better as we make those inroads. And keep in mind, the mentoring program has only been going on for maybe 18 months.
All right, sorry, I'll stop you there. I mean, one of the points I wanted to discuss, and I'll come back to Sami about the training. Do you feel when when in Oman they say to be registered at the public authority of SMEs, you need to not have a job. You need to just be registered for that company. Do you think we are missing on a big share of the market? Like the gentleman he was talking over there, he said he had to leave his job to start his business, and that's a risk that he regrets today. He wants to go back. The other gentleman asked the same question. He said, why would I leave a guaranteed job, start a business? Whereas being an entrepreneur, and that's where I think I disagree with a lot of people, not necessarily means SME, because as an entrepreneur, you can be an entrepreneur in your own job.
Yes.
You can come up with a solution to a problem. That's entrepreneurship. You have a problem, you identify the solution to the problem, and that's what you market, whether it's a product or whether it is a service in your ministry, in your company. And that's when we need to help those people. Now, coming down to the training aspect. Now, I don't know about what Shell does, but it's very impressive because we do the same. We do the mini crash MBA. And we saw that there is a difference between teaching academics and teaching mentoring. You don't want to spoon feed entrepreneurs. You need to tell them what is there, like he said, like Mr. Bill said. You're looking at letting them understand why you need to fill your financial statements, all right? Why you need to have a business plan. It's not just a paper that you take to the bank to get a loan, all right? You need to convince the banker, as Mr. Hussain, that you deserve the loan. You need to convince Mr. Bill that you can be part of his accelerator. So back to Sami, do you think the training that Shell does, when they now send you down those 25 bright ideas, as he said, do you think you feel the difference with those people?
Yeah, at least they would have the basics, with them. The programs run by Shell are usually around the basics of, or the basic fundamentals of finance, let's say, and how to do business planning, how to read the balance sheet, and how to be organized in your business. So I think it helps a lot to be prepared at this stage, to have your own business, But there are still more improvement required, I think, in the process. I mean, they are not entirely ready to go to the next stage.
Why are they not ready?
They have within themselves, they have to be prepared to teach themselves and to get educated and to read and to, improve themselves, I mean, it's not about just
Do you think that's a cultural thing?
It is absolutely a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing.
Because we also face this problem in our portfolio that Contract says that these guys have to submit a monthly management accounts, and they have signed on these, but they do not obey or they do not adhere to these.
What penalties do you have, or what checkpoints do you have when somebody doesn't do what you want them to do?
We just do a lot of follow-up. We just keep bothering them. That this has to be done actually.
But do you think if there were incentives, I mean, you guys could help pitch in. I mean, if you think there were incentives and also like sort of penalties, like if you don't, like for example, if your business is doing well, we can give you a second tranche of investment or a finance. But if you don't cover the KPIs, which is part of them is what you're talking about, is not filling the right reporting system or all that. Do you think that would work, Bill?
How do we, what you're asking, how do we incent a behavior in which a culture doesn't support it? Or the commercial activities we don't have to file tax returns. So there's no incentive for an SME to prepare those management accounts. I don't see incentives.
But sorry, the Ministry of Commerce, and now anybody could correct me, the Ministry of Commerce now dictates that you should fill in an audited sheet at the end of every year. I'm not sure, it's not about category 4 companies, but category 1 and
for certain categories, for Ministry of Labor, you need to submit financial audit
yes, and
accounts.
also for the IRS system, I don't want
Absolutely,
to
you
call
need
it
to do
the
that.
IRS system.
Right, a tax certificate.
But I
right.
think also I agree with Bill on his view, but I also think it's also an incentive for him to have it done, for him to get educated in his business progress, Because without it, you'll not be able to know what is happening in the business. So this is a key element for you to know what is happening. If you have it done on a regular basis, you will come to know how you are performing.
So we are all coming back to the same aspect. It's about to mitigate risk. First of all, you need them to get the managerial experience. You want them to understand the risks. You want them to have a vision. But for them to get that, then they need the right mentoring, not education only. Mentoring. I mean, you could teach somebody a book, but you can't teach them how to go fish. Right. You can read a fishing book, but you don't go and fish with it, right? So with those mentoring, I mean, we can use programs like Shell as an example, to have going on. But coming back to our funding part, you being a fund as group, and Bill, you being operating with funds, and Hussain from the banks, do you think that there should be more horizontal integration between those funds and those financial institutions in Oman? Like, what is the way forward after here? Okay, we spoke about it in the morning. A lady from the audience said, enough talk, let's have action. What do you think the action should be? I mean, how can we integrate, have a horizontal integration? We have the vertical integration. We have the directors from His Majesty. Yeah. We have the government vision. But how do we integrate now horizontally between all those funds and banks? Like you said, a lot of funds are not known or probably didn't hear about it. Is it a marketing issue? Is it reaching out to them? What do you think? Because when you talk about the public authority for SMEs, their condition for you to register is to be unemployed, an entrepreneur ID card. That's what I understand until today. So you're missing out when you say they don't get the SMS, so probably because they didn't register. But how can we get over this? What do you think funds should do, banks should do?
I think we are complementing each other now. I don't see us competing, with the...
No, not competing. How can you integrate? We don't want the
I think more has to be done. Maybe,
referrals.
Referrals, I think we're doing that already. We have a case recently. We referred to a bank. It's already with us. They wanted a bigger facility, so we sent them to a
That's
bank.
important.
I think the model
if you get a case from him, somebody they financed, somebody they did the training for, and they already worked with, do you think this reduces your risk?
Of course. See, for us, as I said in the beginning, it's all about the comfort. It's all about the comfort. If we have that comfort, because that's why I was about to say that the models of each fund works in a different way. Maybe if I'm a member of credit committee of RAFT. The way they operate is totally different than the way Grofin operates, and how Sharaka operates, and how definitely different than how banks operate. Now, yes, I would entertain, let me use that word, but I don't guarantee that the banks will really finance that because the model they work is a bit different than how the banks think. And maybe the referrals will come, but then we might be much more conservative. We might be much more expensive for the client.
This now takes me to the last point. Yeah. Now, all the funds in Oman, all the banks in Oman, although funds, but they all operate as a bank. They all give you term loans. That means that the entrepreneur is starting his or her business with a liability on the balance sheets. Do you think that it is time that we introduce actual, realistic, I know Sharaka does private equity, but it's a loan as well, so you have to pay installments. So don't you think, Bill, if you can help me with this, don't you think you're adding more pressure on the entrepreneur because he has now a loan to pay?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that having a way where we come in as private equity and we buy into the business, all right, and we provide something like a hybrid, like what Shell is doing, provide finance and be a partnership, do you think the culture is ready in Oman? The entrepreneurs are ready to become partner with his idea with a private equity firm?
Personally, I don't see a lot of entrepreneurs wanting to give up 49, even 49%.
I think it's a challenge. They're not interested really in having partnerships with, or others getting involved in their business. They like to own, fully manage their business.
I understand you, but that's also taking out 3 different types of finance that everybody knows, which is angel investors, private equity VCs, and crowdfunding, because there is a lot of buzz coming out about crowdfunding these days. Do you think that crowdfunding would work in Oman, for example? Because, well, actually, privacy, they call it now, private equity funding, all right? Do you think that would work in Oman? Do you think Omani culture is willing to finance not based on a loan, not based on a profit margin or interest rate, but based on building a business and helping each other? Because you go back and you see examples in the US, Silicon Valley, we were discussing. Silicon Valley, most of Apple, Google, all those, Facebook, they started with an angel investor, then a VC, then they went for bigger loans, then they went for their IPO. Do you think that this gap exists in Oman? That this would help banks if the bank knows that this business survived for 3 years?
I seriously think it's a challenge. It's at the end of the day, it's about risk you need to assess, and then it's a combination of the business owner plus the investor. They have to assess and weigh the risk, and if it is workable for them, then it becomes maybe they could come up with some sort of workable solutions options.
Let me tell you, there are a couple of companies, 1 or 2 companies I know, historically they tried this concept. They have tried to take a shareholding in small companies, invested on them, 50%, 51%, or 49%, whatever. But the model did not work well, actually.
It didn't work.
It did not work well. It's mainly basically because of the cultural thing.
Yeah.
All
right.
We did a couple of equity transactions. This is a challenge again, because there's no repayment terms. They give up some share, but again, it's long-term investments. The performance is not that great, so the mentality is not supporting such approach. We do also startups. We have done our portfolio is 25%, almost 25 or above startups. So, we have these challenges also with startups, coming into the, into the market, establishing a business and having an idea maybe developed, and funding that with the term loan, basically. Again, that's a challenge also we have. So it's the business mind is not fully fulfilled there.
You want to pitch in the last
I think we do have private equity and angel financing here in Oman, but it's family-based. I think we have large families financing their own companies. And I think it's there. It's not there for the public as a whole.
But that's where we need to target, the public, the normal entrepreneurs. We will discuss this, but I'll go for Q&A because we're tight on time. So if anybody has questions, now's the time. Tell us.
Yes, I was wondering what's your idea about crowdsourcing? I know there's no framework or legal framework in Oman at the moment, but as bankers and financiers have lots of experience as well. Is that something potentially possible to crowdsource funding? What kind of framework would we look at? Equity, in the States and other places, there is no commitment whatsoever. Once you finance, it's pretty much a donation towards that business.
It works in America because we have very liberal shareholder regulation. And that's what we need to move towards in Oman to make that work, is much easier changes in equity. Anytime we do a shareholder change, it's a huge process.
Here in Oman.
And you have to think about the regulations for SAOG versus a closed stock company. If they were to become more liberal, I do believe we could see that here.
I mean, there are ways. I mean, in Dubai, we were in discussions with a company called Irukia. I think Sherry also spoke to them. And the way they went around it, because even Dubai doesn't have the legal frame for, equity crowdfunding. And what they did is they went and registered in the UK. So they're a UK-based company providing crowdfunding in the UAE. Now, what we are doing here in Oman is actually we registered with SEC in the US, in New York. And that's, we still want to know, I hope the central bank guy was here, we would have asked him. Because this is, again, the regulations. Would they allow an American-based crowdfunding or a private equity crowdfunding to be able to participate? Because you see, a lot of investors abroad, they're willing to invest, not necessarily the culture in Oman, all right? Now, some of it is charity, you're absolutely correct, but others, they actually, like Eurokia and the UAE, they actually finance projects all around the Middle East, except Oman. They didn't touch Oman yet. But they do provide financing. They go through it by, giving you shareholder agreement, but the entrepreneurs are ready as well. They're pitching up a 5-10 minutes videos on their website, but are we ready? Is the culture ready for this? All right? But hopefully one day, inshallah. Anybody else? The gentleman over there.
Assalamu alaikum, Jalal al-Zidi. I run my own business for a couple of years now. I'm not gonna ask about the challenges and the forms and the stuff required by banks to give a loan. Let's put that aside. Let's talk about the interest rate applied to get a loan from a bank or a program. From my experience, Bank Muscat has a program, and they were asking for 12.5% per annum to get that, to go through that program and get the fund, which is, it doesn't look like supporting SME, it looks like making profits from SMEs, which is, it shouldn't be that way. It should be supporting with less interest. Of course, Rafat is there to support with nice interest and all of that, but if we're talking about commercial banks and attracting entrepreneurs to go through the programs by the commercial banks, the interest rate has to be put in such a way that is attractive to entrepreneurs.
Shukran. You can answer and then I'll.
Okay, it's been a while since I've seen 12.5% interest rate being applied for any of the clients, honestly. I don't know about Bank Muscat, I'm just talking about my own organization. But yes, just remember that these are privately owned banks. They have their budgets, they have their boundaries, they have their costs. There are so many costs are involved, then much more than people think. There are operating costs, cost of fund. There is some provisions that needs to be made to satisfy the regulator. There is
also, you have minimum that you cannot go below in interest rate terms by the CBO.
Not really. That we have our flexibility in terms of the interest rate. But then, yes, we have our own also where with the calculations to made. Again, we are a profit organization. Yes, we can always compromise on the profit, but definitely we would like to go in loss, because we are also questionable by our stakeholder shareholders.
Just to add on it, banks, when they look at you, they're not funds, all right? إيش قصدي? They have risk, and the way they mitigate risk, it depends, and that's why the risks go up. Now, some of the lady that stood up, she was talking about Dubai. A loan in Dubai for an SME less than 1 year old or 1 year old and above, but less than 2, is 29.8%. That's Dubai. That's Dubai. And then whatever you're lower than 3 years, they give you 22%. And you will never see a loan less than 18% for a commercial company. All right? So we are lucky in Oman. The cost of your capital is lower. All right? It's lower. You can go to ODB, صح ولا لا? But you have to think what they think as well. They have to mitigate the risk from you. Is it? Anybody else? Because I think we will only have one question if anybody. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you guys. Thanks.